And we have Jessica, who says, in this day and age, that cannot be true. We are in an environment of IT, and there is no way they can tell us 10 billion just disappeared. All right. There are checks and balances that have been put in place, and our county governments are failing us. The MCAs, to mention a few. So those are some of the comments that are coming through. Please do let us know what your thoughts are, and we shall definitely, I shall be reading them through as we carry on. I'll introduce the panel that we have this morning, and we are joined by Kevin Osido, who's from Governance Watch. We have Peter Okongo, who's a media consultant and also a business editor, and Maurice Aaron, who's a business analyst. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. Maybe to set the pace for this conversation, would like to listen into what Governor Waitito had to say in his own defense. Remember, he went before the Senate, and he seemed surprised. He seemed like a deer that had, the headlights on its eyes, not knowing where these figures came from. But of course, given the society that we're living in today, the environment that we're in today, everybody's suspicious. And of course, it was first of all thought, is Governor Waitito serious? But it seems that it's not just Governor Waitito. But let's listen into what he had to say first.
Is from the Auditor General. And from the queries from the Auditor General, this information about the national vote heads, the ones that have just been mentioned, are not queried by the Auditor General because there are no money spent and they are not part of our vote heads. We have 14 vote heads which are very, very clear, and the auditor's report is like now from this the whole report. It is up to page 16, but from page 17 there is an annexure which is, according to us, a foreign document. But since it came from the Auditor General, we said we cannot just remove those pages because we knew very well that the report with the Senate and even the COB might be having the same pages. What, according to us, we think what happened is that this is a system-generated document, and anything could have happened, a mistake, or maybe somebody could have put it in our document just to portray our county as being irresponsible or not having any way to explain. But what I want to make it very clear to Kiambu residents and to Kenyans at large is that these vote heads are national, for the national government.
All right, and just to be clear, it's not just Kiambu government, but it has now been revealed several county governments have also had expenditures which are supposed to be under national government and have not been explained. I'll give you a few. Nyeri County have expenditure on rail transport, special needs education, free primary education, government chemist, whatever that is. Kirinyaga County also on rail transport, health research and development, primary education, marine transport. You have Kiambu, which you've already highlighted. Nyamira, State House affairs, cabinet affairs, coordination of ministries, departments and agencies. Samburu County, East Africa Customs, government chemist, health research. Nakuru County, loan repayment. So, there is quite a number of them. So, let me come to you, gentlemen. I'll start with you, Aaron. Governor Waitito there says that this is a system-generated document and anything could happen.
That's very interesting. First of all, I'd want to say that I don't believe that some of these things are errors. In my view, this is probably the digital version of the analog budget printout errors that we used to see before. Why do I say that? I say that because the way you generate the budget making process is informed from the ground up. To be able to identify the kind of projects that you need, which are then escalated to the national government. Correct. Which then forms part and parcel of the votes that the good governor was talking about. Now, if he's to say that some of these the documents that we found in the audit report were foreign, then basically what he's saying that even them they are not able to see them before. That doesn't make sense at all, because they had to wait for the Auditor General to flag off some of these things for them to say that we didn't even know what was happening. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
Yes.
All right, and maybe for us to before we demonize and say that maybe there is human-generated errors, because as opposed to system-generated errors, maybe we have human-generated errors which are intentional and by design. Peter Okongo, maybe we can go through the budget-making process for a county so that we fully understand where the checks, where the balances, because there are several things coming up here. There are those who are blaming IFMIS. We have the likes of Governor Waiguru, who has blamed Treasury directly and even demanded for an apology. But let's start with the budget-making process for a county.
The budget-making process for a county, is, as my colleague has said, is clearly set in law, and it starts from the grassroots. There's public participation once they have come up with their budget
and the projects that they would want.
Yes, they want to be taken votes on. They are voted on the various projects. They come up with public participation, and then they vote on the amounts for each. And then now this is now what is passed on to is input into IFMIS. I don't think that it is a typing error. I think, and the reason I'm saying that is because in 2018, the National Treasury came out and said that they had ring-fenced IFMIS. It was now a foolproof system. This was after the NYS thing and all that, and Waiguru's affidavit in 2016, when she said that the people were just, the way IFMIS was, and which I found very strange, is that the way IFMIS was, there was a back door that could allow guys to go in and just change things once you have already agreed on something. So oversight is a big problem, and I find it strange also that maybe at some point we need to have a discussion about where we as media also probably lost the plot, because I think these things have been out there. They have been on the websites. The budgets were there open. And how come no one picked
Nobody
this?
picked that
Yes.
until now.
Until
right,
now.
Until
So
the Auditor General
yes.
has flagged it.
Yes.
Kevin Osido, we talk about public participation, but sometimes it sounds like a very, very nice word to say, but how does it even work? For instance, let's just take a county, maybe Makueni, for example. I do know that they have a dam that they have built. Public participation would mean that the people of Makueni came together and agreed that for us, a priority is the dam. Then the process of now doing the budget comes in to a point where it is approved. Just guide us on how that works so that we now look at the budget making process from the beginning to the end. And then how is it that 10 billion can be missing from counties?
So very good example from Makueni County. What really happens is there are mechanisms that have, and these things are not amorphous, they are in the Constitution, guided by the Constitution of Kenya itself. We have the Public Finance Management Act, which really presents opportunities for citizens to participate in this process. We have the Urban Areas and Cities Act, which really even gives powers for citizens to organize around their residents or around their towns to be able to be seen as formidable forces to be considered in the budget making process. We have the County Governments Act of 2012, which really sets very clear platforms and opportunities that counties need to put in place to be able to ensure that citizens participate. That's at the national and county level. The other layer is the county assembly, which really is supposed to exercise oversight, but much more fundamentally is also to put in place mirrored legislations excuse me, from the national government, which then support the four different acts that I have mentioned. So for instance, county assemblies can put in place a Makueni County Public Participations Act, which then presents, for example, if we want to do a public participation process, who needs to be invited? How are they invited? How do we present that notice out there? Is it going to be on two very widely spread newspapers? Are we going to have posters? Are we going to have billboards or blackboards on at our ward level? So how is it going to be done? What is going to be the role of the ward administrators in that forum? When does a governor come in place? A governor comes in place, therefore, by putting in place what is called the County Budget and Economic Forum, which most counties are still up to now struggling to put in place.
Together.
The beauty about the County Budget and Economic Forum is that it is an open platform where citizens also speak and respond to queries. In fact, I'm utterly surprised that we are having this conversation of Kirinyaga, Nyeri, Kiambu, and all these other counties at a national level, and nothing is happening at the county level, because at this point would have been seeing county assemblies pushing for the resignation of governors and CCs. I'm very impressed by what Nandi governor has done, but there is still more that needs to be done within that context, because firing a driver what is the place of a driver in a budget other than as a citizen? The gentleman or the lady has very limited, science insofar as what my role would be as a driver in the budget making process. So, Michael, having gone through all that, it is therefore incumbent that we move into the budget making process, which is really a circle that starts at the National Treasury in about August 30th towards the beginning of September, where they issue what is called the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework, the MTEF. Normally, there are big meetings at KICC, and I think sometimes they have also worked together with county commissioners to have those conversations at the former regional, the eight former regional provinces, where then county commissioners and officers from Treasury go into the regions and help open up that MTEF. At that point, citizens need to be wary, because then we are asking ourselves, how then does our county mirror what is happening at the national level? At the county level, there are also supposed to be public discussions, where then we have a review of what happened in the past, in the last budget cycle, as opposed to what we are seeing into the next budget cycle. The entry point into the next budget cycle then is September, where county governments are supposed to put in place what is called the County Integrated Development Plan, the CIDP. The CIDP is what sets out what the governor said he would do, as opposed to our context as a people and what our aspirations as citizens are. Then within our aspirations, we make recommendations or proposals which are then captured into the CIDP. Those are called programs, projects, which then are supposed to mirror what the citizens feel. They are documented, and then 7 days are opened for public participation into the CIDP, where citizens ratify. They say, yes, this is what you want to do, this is what you want to see, Bwana Governor, this is too expensive, remove it, this is our priority, yes, we like all this. But
and maybe because of for the interest of time,
yes,
let's assume now that has all happened, and now we have the documents that have the facts and figures of what the county government needs to spend. Mr. Aaron, now that we have it there, as an auditor or an accountant, there is a process that now the county follows so that this money is approved and released. What is that process?
Basically, once the whatever priorities that the counties want have been provided to the National Treasury, depending on the time that the budgets are done, that amounts are given out per specific request per project. They don't just happen in a lump sum. Each and every project then makes a request, and there's an elaborate, it's about eight steps. There's an elaborate from, saying that this is the project that you've identified, stating that by when you need the money, instructing the procurement people at Treasury to start their processes until the amounts are released. If it gets to a level that now the amounts have already been released, it means effectively that all these 8 stages and the processes were initiated. Yeah, so then it begs the question, particularly for something like funding South Sudan peace. How then was that done if all these processes were meant to be or meant to have been followed? I really don't understand how. And then you see how this information has been coming out. It's been very staggered. It starts with Kiambu, then all of a sudden we have all these other counties. Then we have the county, the association of governors coming together and saying, you know what, hey, hold a bit. They release a press statement saying, we need to investigate this thing thoroughly. We need the IFMIS person fired. But the whole idea of having IFMIS in the first place was to try and stop some of these issues.
It was a huge stopgap measure for this.
If there is something like this, then it means that if it is a human error, then this is something that was already factored into the system that was only flagged off by the Auditor
General. It's an intentional human error. Mr.
Yes.
Okongo, you mentioned that as media we may have slept on the job, so to speak, because this information has been out there, yet we have not picked it. But then the question is, sometimes we are following the current story. Is it that we lack maybe, do we need maybe a desk which purely deals with corruption and economy and stuff like that, so that they're able to follow up? Because we must admit that they're very detailed, and it needs somebody to literally just sit there and look at those figures and then begin to pick out anything that looks suspicious. We're almost getting into investigations.
I wouldn't say we need a desk per se. I think what is reallocation of resources. County government coverage of county government budgets is still a very wanting area in terms of how the media works right now. The journalists who are covering county government budgets, they are not a lot of them are not trained. They have not been taken through the process of what it means to cover a budget. And so I think it's an issue of putting the resources where it's needed most. Whereas the national budget is well covered by our reporters and all that, I think we need to start thinking about, because this is now where money is if you see these things, this means the scrutiny of the national government is so high that people are coming up with new ways to steal funds. And now, because they realize there's a gap in terms of scrutiny of county government budgets, this is not the best place to go and put in these things.
All right,
so to add on what Mr. Kong was saying, with the onset of devolution, there's a way that even the reporting structure was a bit, for media houses, was a bit, I can say, convoluted, because most of the devolution issues are political.
Yeah.
But then here is a case where you are talking audit, you are talking figures, you are talking. So I think there's need to probably rearrange or reassign, rearrange, reallocate the kind of resources that go towards coverage of anything that involves auditing, anything that, whether it is politically connected, let's say like in the case of devolution, to be able to get some of these figures out correctly. Because the people, I think the reporters who have been covering all these issues are mostly politically inclined.
Correct.
While the issues that are here are more of the figures, the economics and the audits and all that.
It's more technical, yes, and requires a technical eye, yes, and somebody who understands the budget. And Kevin Osido, you're from Governance Watch. How is it that Governance Watch has not picked this and possibly put it in the public forum?
Not to say that hasn't picked it, and this to us is really good news, because it shows the kind of reports that we are doing. We do what is called the County Governance Index, which assesses levels of service delivery for counties insofar as services like health, education, agriculture, infrastructure, and water are concerned. And some of the issues that came up from our initial report, for instance, some of the things that we look at include the technical understanding of the people who sit at the point where this implementation is being done, like chief officers, the county executive committee members, the CECs, among other people like directors. So we look at, are they really competently qualified, or rather, how would they match the expectation of the citizens against the work that they are supposed to do? Two is the involvement of the citizens in all these processes, particularly the budget making process. And then three is how counties provide feedback. And we are happy because this is happening. And what this shows to us is that there is still need for a lot of work to be done. And what we have been able to do is to identify about 13 counties where we do technical assistance to the offices that have been given, very low marks from our indices or our reporting. And we have been engaging with those counties to be able to ensure that they have technical support, that they have platforms and mechanisms to involve the citizens and the public in the work which they do. Because one thing that we also need to note is that counties are unique in their own ways. There are counties that serious things are happening, but you will never see them covered on the papers. But there are counties that are so open that something happens and anyone passing by, including a matatu guy who is just minding his and her own business, will say, hey, apara lakini hile, there is something that is fishy around it. So our work as an organization is, of course, to speak the voices of the citizens, but not in a manner as to say that counties or other devolution is not working. It is supposed to be guided by systems, which we are talking about, the frameworks, constitution, laws and legislations, and opportunities for citizens to participate. On the other angle, we also engage with institutions like the Office of the Controller of Budget, whose role it is really to vet, ultimately to ensure that whatever that counties have already put in their budgets are confirmed, and that she provides consent, and then ultimately all these things are fed into IFMIS. And if you realize, the Office of the Controller of Budget has been a little bit silent on this issue, because I think, Michael, I would propose that we also engage with the Office of Mheshimiwa Agnes Odhiambo, so that we understand exactly what happens in the last enter button that you press to confirm the budgets of these counties, were issues like South Sudan, peace process fed into those budgets.
That, yes.
And then, of course, the Auditor General, whose role is then to audit and then ultimately to look at what lessons can we learn. And for us as an organization, we've identified one thing which we think needs to be done, which is preventive auditing. You realize that all these reports we are talking about are 2015, 2016 reports, 2016, 2017, 2017, 2018.
Correct.
But today we are talking 2019, 2021 budgets. The question then is, what would happen with the amount of monies that would be suspectedly stolen between these eras, or rather the periods for which we are still waiting to audit the budgets in the next 4 years. So we need to, even as we look at the gaps and errors that are taking place today, look at what are the lessons that we can be able to learn from the mistakes that are being taken now.
That have been done before.
Exactly.
All right, let me come to you, Aaron, and let's pick that you've mentioned severally. Kenya South Sudan Advisory Services. According to the Auditor General in Kiambu County, 58 million was on the approved budget and 58 million was the actual payment. Now, South Sudan Advisory Services can never be under Kiambu County. That's national government. That, I mean, it doesn't even appear. But the question then remains, was this 58 million actually expended? Was it withdrawn? Was it spent?
If we go back to the structure that is there, which is IFMIS, and relook at those accounts and how some of these things were actualized, we should be able to very easily state very clearly how much was spent and who to what accounts. So that is information that should be very available.
And that is information
Yes.
that is accessible, because
Yes.
sometimes we go round in circles as though this money is not traceable. How does 58 million leave an account and we have no idea to which account it went and for what it went for?
And then another question in, let's say, the South Sudan advisory, what are the tangibles? What are the deliverables? What exactly are the services that are being delivered? Are they paying consultants? Were they delivering food? What exactly?
What exactly was
so
that?
it brings a lot of issues that can be very easily sorted out if we just go back to state from the vote itself and to the payment on what exactly were these deliverables. What exactly were the tangibles in this vote that were paid for.
Now, Mr. Okongo, that now brings in the question of the governors, because at the end of the day, they are the gatekeepers. They're the ones taking care of the county, the whole county as it were. But now with 58 million, if we use this as an example, of course there are other figures, but if we use that as an example, the buck has to stop somewhere.
The buck stops with them.
With the governor?
Yes. Politically and also in terms of the financial management. The Public Financial Management Act requires them as the topmost to take action in areas where they see their weaknesses and gaps in their structures in terms of audit, in terms of even governance. And I think they have to accept, I don't accept that you can push this to IFMIS and say this is now an IFMIS issue. IFMIS is now the convenient scapegoat for everything. Yes.
Okay.
It is not the...
And I want to now refer and hear what your take is on a press statement from Governor Waiguru. And this is to do with her demanding an apology from Treasury, but at the same time also blaming Treasury for that. And IFMIS, your thoughts, Aaron, on that? Is that just a scapegoat? I mean,
I think it's very interesting to demand an apology before even the investigations are done to establish exactly what the issues were. So here is a case of, let's say, the good governor jumping a couple of steps and even instilling some sort of fear on the individual at the other end. Now, if the investigations are done and it's established that this is exactly what happened, then that the amounts were paid, then what happens in that case?
Yeah, so investigations should, I mean, she has, I'll just read the statement. She says, media statement on Kirinyaga County budget expenditure, allegations, and demand for an apology from National Treasury and immediate resignation of the IFMIS director.
She's trying to counter the process before even the process starts, because now how do you call for resignations before
we know
exactly what happened?
Before we put our finger on
then
the
it
problem.
means that you're probably trying to cover those investigations.
Kevin?
Yeah.
There is no way. I'm still trying to, understand how possible it can be that this kind of issue, whether errors or no errors, could have happened. Because again, and it is Mheshimiwa Waiguru who is, credited with IFMIS when she was, at Treasury, and of course, yes, devolution at that point, and ultimately what we are seeing today. And she told us that even systems are run by individuals. It is people who run. They sit at the back and give, codes and all those issues, all those things. Why don't we go to the person who is called IFMIS director and ask him or her what really happened? Because there is no way, if counties are going to invest in going through all these systems, it is not still possible that you will have functions that are not your county government functions appearing on your budget until when the report is taken to the Senate. Because before the enter button of IFMIS is ultimately given a green light, there is someone who confirms and sits there and says, yes, these are our vote heads, these are our figures, let it go. Until when that money goes into the various commercial banks of the various counties or whichever bank, and then it is withdrawn in either checks or cash and given to suppliers, or they do whatever they need to do with the money. It is still not possible that governors can today say we demand apologies on issues which they should have been at the top of, because at what we are calling the County Budget and Economic Forum, where these documents are printed in black and white, in hard copies, it is the governor who is the chair of that particular forum. I don't think Mheshimiwa Waiguru would do us
in their defense,
justice.
they are, and using the words of Waitito, he says it's a system-generated document. In other words, this is a document that they cannot be responsible for because it is generated by the system.
But either way, at this point, before governors, I liked what the chair of the COG, Mheshimiwa Wycliffe Oparanya said. He said, okay, let's find a way of sitting together with the National Treasury and address the errors. Before governors begin to say we demand apologies. Yes, we understand that these things in the public eye, we believe that governors have stolen, whether they are errors or not errors. But the history of this country, especially with regards to, fiscal expenditure and revenue generation, has been that people do system errors to steal. It has never been for the good of the citizens. We have not seen a county that has undertaken a system error to be able to put free primary education, buy excess drugs for hospitals, put in place, running water into people's homes and all that. It has always been they steal, they go to Dubai, they buy big cars, they come and employ their girlfriends and boyfriends and all that. It has never been for the good of the citizens. It is always against the citizens. So this, in the eye of the public, is you have stolen our money. So I agree with COG to the extent that yes, we need to sit together as Treasury, undertake investigations, and in my view, if it is the IFMIS director where then the blame would be laid, arrest the person, and as my friend Okongo said, Treasury said we have ring-fenced IFMIS, and there are no chances of NYS 1, NYS 2, County X, County Y, and County 47. IFMIS would not fail at this point. So we need therefore to go down into what really happened.
Okay, Mr. Okongo, let's look at IFMIS now as a system. And initially, even before NYS 1 and 2, it was supposed to be a foolproof system. And the truth of the matter is, regardless of how good a system is, it is operated by human beings. And if those human beings are corrupt, they can find a way to short-circuit it. But just let's look at the IFMIS system, and for it to release 58 million, there has to be a process. Whether it is passwords, whether it is, the old way of banks doing it would be you'd have 2 people or 3 people with a key, and not one person can open, or a combination. One would have to enter one combination, and just for safety. Now with IFMIS, do we have those safety measures whereby if we are the 4 custodians of the IFMIS system, you cannot get into the system without my knowledge, and none of us can?
Clearly not. Like I said, in 2018, after what they called a thorough investigation, they decided that IFMIS had been ring-fenced. It is now okay, and you are told, in fact, I remember the story in the Business Daily was very extensive and detailed how they claimed to have ring-fenced the system. There is somebody called, given the authority to incur expenditure in every department or ministry. And that person is the one who ultimately makes the decision that this is okay.
This is approved.
Yes. And clearly it seems if what we are going, if we take what they're saying as fact, then clearly it appears that there are people who still have access who should not have access.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Aaron, I think we'll be getting to the tail end of this in a short while because of time. But what should we make out of this whole charade?
I think it's very clear that there are still some loopholes that need to be addressed in as far as devolution and public finance management is concerned. One thing that comes out of the top of my head is the need to have auditors at each and every step of the way, and particularly auditors who don't come after 2 or 3 years. If the county governments can actually have individuals within who are auditors within the institution themselves, to be able to identify some of these issues beforehand, that will be a good thing. Secondly, there was a talk some time a while back of having governors and their whole assemblies and the people under them trained on some of these things, so that they're able to understand. Probably the individual at the ground doesn't understand how the payment system works, or what to check for where, so that you don't get money being spent on South Sudan peace process.
Okay. Kevin Osido, having auditors, although we had the governor for Nairobi County when he was before the Senate not too long ago, also saying that we also have auditors who are asking for kickbacks for them to give a clean bill of health. So again, we're back to the same place where even if we have auditors, is that a solution?
It's still possible that we'll have very unpatriotic people calling themselves auditors who would want to do those kind of, involve themselves in those vices. In my view, the systems are in place. We have a constitution that has progressively given us opportunities to put in place whatever works, customize it into whatever works for us, whether it's public finance management, whether it's our audit systems, whether it is public participation and all that. What therefore counties need to do is involve the citizens in these processes, because like this, for example, is going to be a tall order even to call rallies and begin saying hizo ripoti za auditor ni uongo, wanatuchochea, wanatuonea. Kenyans understand and they know what their monies can be able to do. They know what they go through on a daily basis to be able to put monies into their pockets, which is ultimately taxed and taken into treasury and is supposed to come back to deliver services. So we know what our monies are supposed to do. Lastly is counties invest in public preventive auditing. So much such that when we have projects that are supposed to be, taken into the counties, open up spaces for public participation, whether it's the budget process, advertise it, and the way we do our rallies. Do the same thing for public participation, put budgets for those public address systems, go out there and don't come with these big documents that we see, break them down and get qualified, competent people, ourselves, other technical people will be able to go to the counties and help the citizens to understand.
Okay.
When ultimately the projects are on the ground, the bill of quantities are being shared, call the people and tell them, this is what you want to do, put up a pit latrine here, this is the expected amount of money, this money has been broken down into 1, 2, 3, 4, it's going to take 14 months, and this construction is going to be done by so and so firm, so that people who live in that particular ward can keep coming and checking what is the progress, how are we doing, other than waiting for 4 years and then reports come from Nairobi and then we start seeing these charadic narratives.
All right, gentlemen, I'll give you each an opportunity for your closing remarks, and I'll start with you, Mr. Okongo, but without, trying to make a judgment before the investigations have gone into place. But Kenyans at the end of the day have suspicions and their ideas of what might be going on. From an expert's eye, what do you make out of what we have? Could it be that it is a system error? Is it possible that maybe we have not mastered IFMIS or whatever system that they're using to a point where it's not yet working? Is that a possibility, or is it that there is a possibility of error but by design, error that has been designed by those within?
Error by design. I think we have reached a point in this country where there are certain people who sit in certain offices high up and say, let them do their budgets. And when it's done, there's this project I want to do, so make sure that there's money. So how do we do this? So I think it's error by design. I think the system is set up to fail, and that is exactly what is happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does the buck stop? The governors?
The buck stops with the governors.
Okay.
Yes.
Aaron?
I think I'll say these are symptoms of a system that is still trying to find out exactly where it stands. I also think that as long as there is the human element to IFMIS, some of these issues will still be there. And I think one of the biggest things that probably you can do is to have preventative auditing, just like my friend has said, so that you're able to identify some of these issues beforehand, even before the money is lost. I'll stand with error by design, and I think it's governors to be held accountable.
It's governors to be held accountable.
Yes.
Kevin Osido, your closing comments?
Having engaged with counties at different levels, the CECs for finance are competent people. They are qualified. In about 4 of them, we have people who've worked very extensively with the Ministry of Treasury in the past. And so I don't see them allowing this to really take place in their county budgets. So I would go with error by design and probably these people we keep calling cartels who sit somewhere and say, we need money for this, we need money for that. And then ultimately is institutions like the DCI to find out what is this thing we are calling South Sudan peace process. You know, what exactly is this? Is it happening there? Is it happening here?
Is there food
Who
that
is
has
in
been
charge?
brought?
Is there a
Is it
vote?
consultation?
Because we have people still in the government who really travel to South Sudan and they're involved in Sudan peace process. So we need to find out how do they book their tickets, where do they sleep, which resources do they use? Is it from UN? Is it from Kenya? What is this rail transport we are talking about that is going towards a particular country where hakuna railway? What is this? So that DCI tells us exactly, okay, we have a process that has been given a green light by the government, and this is how it is running. Then that way, Kenyans will also feel confident that yes, these were errors that were really designed, but then we are correcting them.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. According to the experts, well, they say it's error, but error by design. We'll wait for the investigations for that conclusion to be made, but according to the experts here, that's what they feel. And of course, the verdict and your